Alright, fuckers and fuckettes. Now, I did a little reading on some of the stuff that y'all have been sending me, and now, I should state right out front that my opinion on gun control is sharp eye, steady finger, hit what you aim at. You don't pull that motherfucker, not even to show nobody, unless you ain't got no choice but to use it. That's just my opinion. But it doesn't take any effort at all to see that drunk drivers in any given state, as a general rule, there's two exceptions, but drunk drivers kill more people than guns do. And we ain't about to outlaw cars. And there's a lot more cars than there are guns. At the same time, there's not as many drunk drivers as there are guns. I mean, the cops kind of took the fun out of that shit. You can't just go out. I mean, that used to be half the fun of driving around was getting plowed, but you can't do that shit no more. Anyway, I mean, you've also got to consider that the number of people dying from guns is less than a tenth of the population, less than 1/10 of 1% of the population. And a little bit more than half of those are suicides, which, you know, hey, you figure half of them fuckers, they'd have probably found another way to off themselves anyway. But this blogger dude, he's made some pretty good sense there. In Wisconsin, this past hunting season, there were over 600,000 hunters. Now, let me say that again. This is over the last several months. Wisconsin's hunters became the 8th largest army in the world. More men under arms than in Iran, more than in France and Germany combined. They went out in the woods with guns. Their object was to hunt, and nobody got killed. I mean, there might have been one mistake there somewhere, but, you know, I don't remember reading anything from Wisconsin. And now that number ain't shit, because Pennsylvania, you had 750,000 hunters. Michigan, you had 700,000 hunters. They all went home. Nobody got killed. You got 250,000 hunters in West Virginia. And the hunters in those 4 states alone would be equal to the largest army in the world. Actually, they would be the biggest army in the world. Now, the point of mentioning that is, you know, if we got that kind of firepower, that's why America hasn't been invaded. I mean, that is the biggest homegrown army stopping a foreign invasion there is. And I mean, that makes hunting, you know, and people owning guns, it's not just, you know, people filling their freezers. It's, you know, really, that is our national security. That's what kept the Japs from landing on our shores. That's what's kept any foreign enemy from ever landing on our shores, is the fact that most people in America at one time had guns. And that's why all the, you know, like the UN and shit, they want to see America disarmed. And, you know, you got all these Democrats in the Senate and shit. Actually, Democratic Party members in general, they're kind of stupid. They'd rather consider gun control instead of criminal control. And that's pretty much, they're mollycoddling these criminals and not doing shit about them, and yet they want to hop on gun control. And if you think about the crime rates, now you look to before 1968, the number of crimes committed by police officers against ex-felons. This is police breaking into ex-felons' homes, harassing them at their jobs, shit like that. From 1968 on, the number of police doing that shit has increased because they know these guys aren't armed. They're not allowed to own a firearm. And these officers are breaking the law, in most cases doing it. I mean, they'll unlawfully enter and search these people's home, and they're not on parole. They have no reason. You know, the officer requires a warrant to be in there, but And I mean, that shit's just now starting to get out on the internet in blogs and on YouTube and shit, but there's not very much of it. But if you look at the raw numbers, there's quite a bit of it that goes on. And, you know, as far as the crime rates have gone up since they've initiated gun control. Not just since 1968. You had that Brady bill around 86 or 87. No, wait a minute. That was during Clinton's administration, I think. And that shit didn't work. That made it worse, because now you got people walking around, they know nobody's got a gun, and they gonna jack somebody because they know that they can. And basically, hey, you know, it's your right to defend yourself, but most people are afraid to now because they're afraid, oh, gun control, blah, 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 we're not supposed to have one and all this shit. Well, you know, hey, it's still your right to have one. You might got to get a conceal and carry permit, and I kind of think that shit's wrong. Because, I mean, that's what kept the crime rates down, is the criminals back prior to 68, they didn't know who had a gun on them. And instead of 1 in 8 households having a gun back then, it was 1 in 3. Burglaries were lower, violent crimes were lower. They didn't know if that woman was going to pull a gun out that person, shoot him for trying to rob her ass in the mall parking lot or some shit, so they didn't even try. Anyway, that's my thoughts on gun control. I'll let y'all fuckers and fuckheads later.